Live from deep in an underground bunker in East Tennessee, this is America's premier mortgage field services expert, Paul Williams.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you back to another edition of Foreclosurepedia podcast. Foreclosurepedia podcast presentation of Foreclosurepedia Radio Network, which premieres Sundays. We're coming to you today with a special edition of the Foreclosurepedia podcast. The date is the 20th of September, 2016. The time, 15:52 hours Eastern Daylight Time. Broadcasting live from the Foreclosurepedia, Tennessee General Headquarters. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you what, we have a lot on the plate today. We have a marginal amount of time to get it out, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the solicitation for the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development's 3.10 Field Service Manager contracts. That date has been extended out a little bit. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Brent Martin of BLM Companies and his cronies over at Innotion. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't want to miss out on this. And we'll be right back with you in a moment after a word from our sponsors. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you know your one-stop shop for everything labor-orientated in the mortgage field services industry always has, it always will be, Foreclosurepedia. As you also, show prep is always ongoing. Show prep, ladies and gentlemen, is in the DNA of Foreclosurepedia. I have sitting right here in front of me, the recent notice issued out by FBO.gov. It's entitled, the synopsis, the entitlement is the 3.10 Field Service Manager contract being released by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. The synopsis, there was an update issued yesterday. The 3.10 Field Service Manager solicitation should be released on or before September 30th, 2016. That comports with precisely what Foreclosurepedia predicted early on, but most telling within this synopsis update is the fact that the Santa Ana Hawk and the Atlanta Hawk are being broken apart into two separate solicitations. Now, being the grammar Nazi that I am, if you actually go to FBO and you read this update, you're going to see that they misspelled the word there, T-H-I-E-R. We're going to go ahead and give them a break on that because everything else that HUD has done, everything else that Craig Carnes has done has been historic. I'm going to read from an email between Mr. Carnes and myself early on. This is going all the way back to May, dealing with the fact, at least the way I perceive this, is he has become extremely frustrated with what I call the graft, the greed, and the corruption. The business as usual, the use of small businesses as proxies by large businesses, that's over. Here's what he said to me, 23rd of May, 2016. The difficulty, and this is cutting into the email, the difficulty is getting both the volumes and being able to cover the entire service areas. Personally, I'd like to see more of the smaller end servicers band together and team to get the volumes coverage areas nailed down. I'd also like to try and provide incentive for firms that are already established in a particular area or HOC jurisdiction, rather than constantly introducing new businesses to areas that they are not currently established. Either way, I am certainly open to comments and expect evaluation changes when the solicitation does go live. Now, I reaffirm my belief that HUD has had it, Craig Carnes has had it with these fraudsters, because when they released the pre-solicitation of 310, it was made very well clear small business is going to get a seat at the table. In fact, that has happened. These are all designated small business areas. There's no earmarks for the special groups out there. There's no 8A set-asides, no Native American, no veteran. And that's not to say that these smaller, unique groups shouldn't need a hand up. But what they don't need is a handout. Small business allowed to legally compete upon the M FSM in the manner in which it was envisioned back in 1999 when it was launched. When you look at outfits like BLM companies allegedly ran by Brent Martin, BLM is nothing other than Innotion Enterprises. Amos Alexander, all but in name, runs BLM companies. All their high-level staff are Innotion Enterprises. It's well documented. I brought out the fact when we deal with Michael Temple. He's not even in the HOC, the Philly Hawk, that the law requires he resides in. This is horrific, ladies and gentlemen. When we talk about the outright fraud that is ongoing at BLM companies, no two ways around it. And I tell you, because I know Al, you're listening to this. Amos, you're listening to this. I'll square off in court with you any day of the week. I will file a mountain of discovery. I will pull that paperwork out that nobody wants seen. I'll put Mike Murphy in the dock, and I will question him from now till kingdom comes. I'll also put out the recordings that I have. You give that a lot of thought, boys. And I'm going to tell you, if Innotion makes a run on these contracts, the business as usual, the quid quo pro, it's gone. It's gone. In the same manner that we're seeing CWIS now investigated actively by the Inspector General, in the same way that Foreclosurepedia brought forward the simple and salient point that in Battle Creek, Michigan, not only were the attestations to the inspections being produced fraudulently, these were commissions of perjury. Because on the inspection it stated that the property is well documented up on Foreclosurepedia. The code inspector attempted to reach BLM companies for nearly 4 weeks. Could not get a hold of BLM companies. Took the extreme measure of reaching out to the real estate agent stating, I do not want to levy a fine, but we're going to have to. That in turn was sent to HUD in Atlanta. What happened? A fine was levied. So how can you say on the documents that we have, Foreclosurepedia exclusively possesses the documents from the P260 system, that these inspections documented that property amongst countless others was being properly maintained when it was not? And BLM companies, either of their own accord or through deliberate indifference, still submitted the fact that that property in particular passed muster, and yet it got fined. Now, I don't know about how HUD does or does not work. I know in the rest of the world, if I use electronic means to cross state lines in the furtherance of an artifice and or a scheme committing perjury, which creates a False Claims Act violation, my ass is going to do prison time. Now, whether HUD will or will not go on the record about that is their belief is immaterial, because, ladies and gentlemen, while Al Espinoza hangs his hat upon being a Cuban American, this is the United States. Business as usual with Fidel and Raul is immaterial in the United States. So I'm telling you today, ladies and gentlemen, HUD 310, you want to pay attention. If you're a small business and you want to run on HUD, you want to run on this contract, and when the rest of the Philly Hawk opens up, you reach out to Foreclosurepedia today, COO at foreclosurepedia.org. We're going to give you the tools, the education. We're going to put you in the same room because it is high time that the United States taxpayers receive a product for which they are paid for. It is high time that people who own properties in Virginia and use a tremendous amount of United States Department of Agriculture's money to reroute creeks and streams and bridges at the expense of the U.S. taxpayer solely for the benefit of the individual, that ends. That ends today, ladies and gentlemen. Foreclosurepedia, a friend of labor, has been with you nearly a decade now. While all the other groups, the fly-by-night people, the order mills, have fallen, have filed bankruptcies, including Heather Berghorst, the former and now disgraced National Association of Mortgage Field Services regime's secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not a crystal ball that I have. What it is that I have the ability to read the English language. I understand mathematics that are not spun up in the back of a poker playing room with the cigar smoke so thick you can't see through it, and people speaking Russian. Ladies and gentlemen, it's historic. You want to be there. You don't want to be an outsider to it. If you are a small business, you need to come forward today. Let Foreclosurepedia help you. Like a beacon of light, shining in through the dark wilderness of which Eric Miller, the executive director of the NAMPS regime, created. We now lead our people forward. There will not be any more fraud committed against minorities. Mr. Miller, I tell you today, sitting in front of this microphone, that Black Lives Matter. Mr. Miller, I call upon you to turn over the information that you possess. I call upon you to sanction your members whom are defrauding daily. Minorities, minority females with children, and labor. Because Mr. Miller, Black Lives Matter. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to keep an eye on the ball with 310. They've moved out the actual solicitation to honor before the 30th. That's 9 calendar days or less. Reach out. Reach out today. I'm Paul Williams, the editor-in-chief, Foreclosurepedia.org, and I am, in the words of Mr. Trump and others, deplorable. Thank you. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. As usual, you may reach me on Google Plus at Paul Williams, LinkedIn, Paul Williams, and the LinkedIn group Property Preservation Consortium, Twitter, Foreclosurepedia. We stream all our podcasts on iTunes, Foreclosurepedia. We have our screencasts over on YouTube, the Foreclosurepedia channel, and always at foreclosurepedia.org. We'd like to give a special shout out to Amazon.com, whom provides our S3 podcast and video storage, and Cloudflare for hosting Foreclosurepedia in 24 different geo-positioned servers, pro bono as well. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to give me a shout out, COO@foreclosurepedia.org.